And you're watching Book TV on C-SPAN 2 as part of our visits to universities. This week, we're at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, talking with some professors who are also authors. And now joining us here at the law school at Liberty University is David DeWitt. He is the author of this book, Unraveling the Origins Controversy. He is also a professor of biology. In fact, he's chair of the biology department here at Liberty University. Dr. DeWitt, let's start with the basics. Is there a fundamental argument to be made in favor of either evolution or creation, or is there compatibility in your view between the two? And how do you define the argument?
Well, first, creationists and evolutionists live in the same world. We have the same science, we have the same data. It's a matter of how that data is interpreted. Evolution provides an interpretive framework for evaluating scientific data, and creation really provides an alternative framework for interpreting the data. So I'll even pull evidence and arguments from evolution-based journals that would support a creationist interpretation.
So in your view, have we evolved from apes and have animals evolved over the centuries?
Humans absolutely did not evolve from apes, but were directly created by God. There's confusion over the term evolution, because evolution can mean different things in different contexts. For example, when you talk about changes that occur within a group of organisms, that's the small-scale evolution. So like the various dog breeds that we have, everything from a Chihuahua to a Great Dane, St. Bernard. We have a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. There's a huge range of variation, but those all come from an original created kind of dog. That is a type of evolution that we can see. It's changed through time. We can observe it in the present. Now, there's a different type of evolution. We could refer to it as macroevolution or common ancestry. That type of evolution says all living things share the same common ancestor. That's where I would have a dispute. I would not have a dispute with whether plants and our crop hybridization, that type of thing. Antibiotic resistance in bacteria. We can see that, we can observe it in the present. So the difference is when we get to just so stories of how things came to be from the goo to you by way of the zoo, as some have referred to it.
Well, Dr. DeWitt, you start Unraveling the Origins Controversy, but the way the Bible starts with Genesis, looking at Genesis. Some people have interpreted Genesis to mean millions of years. You interpret it as 6 days.
That's correct. That's about chapter 3, where I address the meaning of the Genesis chapter 1. We do take those to mean normal solar days as we see them today. There's a lot of biblical evidence to support, not just from Genesis, but Exodus and elsewhere, to support a recent creation. For example, Jesus said, from the beginning, the Creator made them male and female. He's quoting from Genesis. And Jesus saying man is created from the beginning means it must have been part of that creation week, not 4 billion years after.
So in your view, how old is mankind? How old is the planet?
Roughly 6,000 years.
Do you teach Charles Darwin in your class at all?
We talk about Charles Darwin quite a bit.
What's the value that you see in Charles Darwin?
Well, Darwin, in his Origin of Species, challenged some erroneous notions that people had. And at the time, people thought species were fixed, that they were created exactly as they are today, and that's the way they've always been. And that was incorrect. And we see evidence of change through time. So he was correct in that criticism. But his suggestion that all living things come from the same common ancestor, that's where he's departed. So we teach quite a bit about evolution, but we don't teach it as the explanation for how we and everything else got here.
When you hear the term Big Bang Theory, what's your response?
It's a little frustrating, Big Bang Theory, because the Big Bang Theory doesn't really explain what we most want explained, which is really where did everything come from. It also doesn't explain why there is so much, why there is the universe is so vast. We have pockets of homogeneity, but we have other aspects of heterogeneity. There's a lot that it doesn't account for.
Well, one of the largest scientific projects currently underway is the Super Collider, looking for the so-called God particle.
Again, they're not having much luck.
Why?
It's when we're looking at origins, this is a historical event, and we really have to approach historical science in a slightly different way than we approach empirical science. So in empirical science, which is what I do in my lab, we make a hypothesis. We're predicting the future. And we do an experiment to test. And the experiment is testing whether my prediction of the future is in fact the case. So the only way you can predict the future is if you know something about the way the universe works. So when we're talking about events in the past, that's historical science. And we can't do the experiments in the same way that we can in the lab. We have to make a whole range of assumptions. And we have really multiple competing hypotheses that we have to bring to bear and weigh through them for which is the most robust. So an example, if we have a historical question, say, what killed the dinosaurs? Well, we might say, well, there was a meteorite that collided with the Earth and so forth. And we can look for evidence of that. But there can always be other alternatives that we haven't considered, and we might not have evidence of that. So there could have been some type of lethal Ebola virus that affected dinosaurs, for example. So when answering a historical question, there are things that can come into play that, in spite of, we might have evidence for one thing, some other thing. So when a crime scene is investigated, for example, they are piecing together what happened in the past, and that's a good analogy.
Got your undergrad from Michigan State, a BA in biochemistry.
BS in biochemistry.
BS, and a PhD from Case Western. What's your PhD in?
The PhD is in neuroscience. I did research and still do research on Alzheimer's disease. And so the focus of my research has been in cell and molecular biology.